Welcome to the Mom Needs a Moment podcast. We're your hosts, Chrissy
and Cindy,
co-founders of Her Health Collective.
We are two moms obsessed with revolutionizing the way moms take care of themselves. We are so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Your body is your life's partner, not your life's project. What if you could focus on nourishing yourself for vitality and worry less about your body's size and shape? What if you could step over the threshold of midlife and see elderhood as a time to emerge as your truest self? What if you could approach midlife and beyond as a time to break free from old beliefs about your body? Few things will bring more empowerment and ease into your life than learning to trust yourself and your body. Debra Benfield, or Deb as we know her, has helped hundreds of women heal their relationship with food, eating, and their bodies in her 35-year career as a registered dietitian nutritionist, specializing in preventing and treating disordered eating. She brings her research, training, passion, clinical, and lived experience to the intersection of pro-aging and body liberation. Deb's work is rooted in helping her clients, shifting their body relationship from their life's project to their life's partner, recognizing internalized ageism and ending it, untangling from diet and wellness culture, nourishing their bodies in midlife and beyond to support growing older in alignment with their values, and seeing midlife and beyond as a time of emergence. Today, in part one of our conversation with Deb Benfield, we explore diet culture and the hold it has over our society, and how we can learn to look out for it and fight it for ourselves and our loved ones. We also discuss the power of midlife to emerge as our truest, most authentic self, something I know I would love to know more about. This is an episode you won't want to miss.
We are so excited to be here with you today, Deb. We always like to start with some get to know you questions, who you are, why you do what you do, maybe what your current struggles are as a mom or a care provider. You can choose what questions you focus on, but again, 2 minutes. That's the only caveat.
That's not easy. So I am 64 years old. And when I turned 60, I really got frustrated with what I was seeing in the wellness arena around aging, because I got curious and started digging in a bit more than usual. And I got really unhappy with what I saw. So I basically have just started creating what I would like to have seen when I was turning 60. And what I'm noticing is that women much younger are also really interested in this conversation. So I am pretty passionate about helping women get untangled from what I think is problematic in the wellness conversation.
Love it. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, this is why we reached out to you, right? I think this is a conversation women of all ages want and need to be having. And I think it behooves a lot of women to start thinking about this stuff at an earlier age, rather than waiting until you reach this point where you're like, I'm fed up with everything and I'm done with it. Let's get fed up with it a little bit sooner and take charge of our health and our wellness in a different way. Thank you for sharing that. We're really excited to dive into this with you.
So you have the choice to choose a number between 1 and 31, and I will give you the corresponding question. So we don't even know what you're going to get either.
Okay. How about 7?
What is your favorite recent memory?
Ooh, it's so funny. All these memories that are not so recent are flashing.
Isn't that strange how that happens? It's like you're back when you're 10 and you're like, wait, that's not recent.
Yeah.
Might feel recent.
I mean, yeah, I think just probably the most profound come up first. Not that recently, it's probably been a few years since I've been on a river, but I, at one juncture in my life, was a whitewater kayaker. And being on the river is something I long for, and I'm hoping I'll be doing that in a couple of weeks. But one of the memories that I have is just the way that the light flickers on the kind of ripples on.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
in my mind. That's in my mind on the river in front of me. Yes.
Chrissy always says
absolutely,
the sun, right? Like the sun
Yes.
through the
yeah.
tree.
Oh,
Is
yeah,
that
yeah.
Chrissy?
Yes. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I absolutely love whitewater rafting. I've been a few
Mhm.
times. Whitewater kayaking
Mhm.
sounds
Mhm.
terrifying to me. Like there's something different about being in a raft.
I have been a single mom since my kids were 18 months and 5, and they're now 34 and 30. So I think I jumped into whitewater kayaking. I think I was 45 when I started.
Wow.
That's
And I
awesome.
think I just like intuitively needed to do something that would push me really far into fear and help me begin to trust all sorts of things. So it really was very powerful. And obviously, I still have memories.
What a great memory adventure to have.
It was powerful.
Also, shout out to you, single motherhood. I was raised by a
Mhm.
single mom. It is not
Mhm.
easy. A whole host of added challenges to life there.
Mhm.
So thank you for sharing that with us. And I can see how doing something just for yourself, something intensely physical, something that takes you
Mhm.
outside of
Mhm.
the day-to-day of life, how important
Mhm.
that would be.
Yeah, it was
I'm
great.
excited for you to go on your
Yes.
whitewater kayak, which still, when you say kayaking, scares the crap out of me. But
I
I'm like, let's
recommend
put
it.
us in a big raft.
I recommend it. Yeah.
Okay, all right, maybe we'll give it a shot. Thank you so much for sharing all that, Deb. We are going to go ahead and dive into our conversation with you because your work is fascinating. What you do is fascinating. Through your work, you focus on showing us women that our body is our life's partner, not our life's project. I absolutely love that sentiment. I want us all to sit and marinate with that for a minute. Our body is our life's partner, not our life's project. It's not something we're supposed to be working on and manipulating and changing and pushing and pulling and prodding and stabbing. On your website, you ask, what if you could step over the threshold of midlife and see elderhood as a time to emerge as your truest self? What if you could focus on nourishing yourself for vitality and worry less about your body's size and shape? What if you could approach midlife and beyond as a time to break free from old beliefs about your body? Why does this work call to you? You briefly mentioned hitting your 60s and saying that you weren't happy with what you had explored online, but there has to be some other kind of innate calling that's pulling you into this work. What is your story around this, and why do you feel drawn to support women through this midlife transition?
I'm a registered dietitian, and I got very fortunate in the beginning of my career when I got out of grad school. Pretty early on, I encountered therapists in my area because the way that I was orienting my work, I really looked at behavior and relationship. I'm very relational in my work. So I ended up having relationships pretty quickly with therapists. And then I started working very closely with a therapist, and she was my supervisor, and her specialty was eating disorders. And I think I'm just really fortunate that I started from the beginning looking at women and their relationships to their bodies and how they care for their bodies very differently from most registered dietitians, certainly very differently from how I was trained in conventional education, Western medicine. I just sat across from a lot of pain and struggle. And I think it's just really embedded my, you use the word calling, and that's what it feels like. It feels like I'm a missionary of some sort out in the wild, trying to awaken a desire to do something other than what diet culture teaches.
Yeah, I love that. In your opinion, what is it about midlife that allows us to emerge into our truest selves? Because I know that in motherhood, and I'm approaching 40, that feels like a transition too. In the early stages of motherhood, and things are changing, things are slowing down physically. I still am at a point though where I don't feel like I've emerged as my truest self. I don't 100, and people are like, I hear a lot of people saying, oh, when you get into your 40s, it doesn't matter anymore. You don't care what other people think. Then I hear other people say, oh, it's in your 50s that it happens. And maybe now you're saying it happens in your 60s. I don't know. When does it happen? Does it actually happen? Is it just a certain type of person? Is it really a lot of work that we have to put into? In your opinion, what is it about that midlife phase, regardless of which decade it might happen, and that allows us to actually emerge as our truest self?
When girls go through menarche and start to have that out of control feeling about their bodies changing, because it does really change really quickly without any kind of choice. Same for motherhood, same for menopause. Your body shifts and changes. And some women respond to that by white knuckling around the change. And some women try to go with the change and kind of trust a little bit more. So there may be some distinction in personality types or value systems or such, or circumstances, probably all the above. But I think something happens in puberty when, without us really having conscious awareness, we start to get oriented toward external gaze, the gaze of others, and how we see ourselves. It becomes, we become clearly like conscious and therefore self-conscious at that age. And I think that remains true until we go through menopause. There is a shift toward some freeing from external gaze. Again, there's choice in that. There's circumstances that influence that. But it's an opportunity to return to your girlhood self, is the way it feels to me. And in my mind, that's the most authentic self. And it's not that easy to get to. I think you can sense that when you're connected to your body. I think your body gives you so much information when you have more of a partnership, which is why I say what I say about your body is your life's partner. That relationship that you can cultivate with your body allows you to reconnect with some wisdom that I think is the voice of your authentic self. So you have to do some work around getting disentangled from all of the worry and concern about the gaze and the judgment, and perhaps even health fears. I mean, there's so many waves and layers that women have to navigate around their bodies. I know you know that. I'm still using the river analogies. When you can find some kind of clear, still water to navigate through, kind of quiet all of the muddiness that our culture creates, all the churning, there may be an opportunity there that you don't have in midlife. Midlife like you are, like 40s, like 30s, 40s. You've got so much responsibility in your day-to-day life. I know how hard it is to find any space for yourself. There is an opportunity with going through menopause. I mean, we are so inundated with fear about that. And I'm just here to say it can be a time of emergence. It really can. It's not easy. I think perimenopause is really hard for most people. And then it just feels like it clears. I'm here to say it gets easier and it gets clearer for you. If you don't get all caught up in controlling your body, that can really keep you off your course.
I love the promise that you wrap all of that in. I love the promise that I hear and the analogy of returning to girlhood, because yes, you're right. When did I feel most authentic? And it is when I was a girl. I do look at the women in my life who are beyond menopause. They do have more of an authenticity and less of that outward gaze that you mentioned, less of the worry about others. You talk a lot about your river analogy, the muddy waters and finding calm and finding space, you mentioned. What does that look like? Is that meditation and therapy and walks in nature? Is that like all the stuff that we hear all the time? Are there other secret tips or tricks you have in there?
I mean, I feel like where we're going now in this conversation is more of the practicality. How do you apply the ideas, what I would call principles? How do you create application and the way I think you create that is through practices in your life. And I like to make all of my practices accessible. You can do it with swirling noise around you, with kids or grandkids or partners or just cultural noise. Like, can you do very simple practices like feeling where you're making contact with the earth for a minute or two and see if you can locate your breath. Breath is not easy for everybody and can be activated and dysregulating. So sometimes I recommend the senses and embodiment in the moment throughout the day. And then my favorite practice to recommend as a starting place is to consider that your life gives you 5 times a day. Hopefully you have 3 meals. So at least 3 times that you're feeding yourself. And when you first wake up and before you go to sleep. Those are 5 times that you can. You may think I'm going to do this 5 times and do it once or twice every 2 or 3 days. Of course, it's a lot to ask, but our lives offer that rhythm. And if you can have an interest in connecting with your body as you go through your day in those, like this can take like less than 2 minutes. Maybe less than a minute. But I've done it for so long that when I feel my feet, I can feel my belly soften and my breath come from my belly up and my shoulders drop. So it's just, as you practice it, it is very regulating.
It is.
It's a nice connection. It's all a practice. Yeah.
It takes time. I've been working towards that for a long time. Even this morning, my eyes just wouldn't open. I finally got myself to sit up in bed and I closed my eyes and I just tried to focus. I tried to do my breath, just the in and the out, and try to regulate myself a little bit. Yeah. And just like Christy had said, I really did love how the promise, because I'm in the midst of perimenopause right now. And it's hard not to get stuck in this fixing mentality. I need to fix my body. Is this normal? I have brain fog. Am I going nuts? Just all of that stuff. So what you said was absolutely lovely. Thank you for sharing that. Best-selling author and award-winning journalist Virginia Sole-Smith wrote an article in which you were quoted, and it's titled, "Do Old People Need Less Food?" And we will link that in the show notes for everybody. In this article, both you and Virginia discuss how society pokes fun at behaviors that, quote, if your teenage daughter engaged in them, would not be funny at all. But what we diagnose as eating disordered in thin white girls, we ignore or reinforce in almost every other population.
Yeah.
Will you please provide some examples of behaviors that we have normalized as a society, we've ignored or reinforced in other populations that are actually red flags of disordered behaviors and oppressive beauty standards, that if we were to look at them through a different lens, we would have to alter them. And I can talk about this myself. I was doing behaviors that were actually disordered, and I stopped one day and was like, I don't want my kids to do this. We have 2 girls. I don't want my kids to emulate what I'm doing. I need to change and put myself in therapy. So could you please, but not everybody has that privilege. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
To our Patreon supporters, thank you. We appreciate you so much. Our goal has always been for moms to know they're not alone in the tough and challenging phases of motherhood. We know Mama Needs a Moment provides this to our listeners.
We are thrilled with the growth of the podcast over the past 2 years. Last year, Spotify shared that Mama Needs a Moment was in the top 30% most followed podcasts, was heard in 9 countries, and had more content than 97% of other creators in the family category.
We have recently launched a Patreon account for Mama Needs a Moment. This is a great way for you to provide additional support to Her Health Collective.
We've set up 3 options for Patreon supporters, each with its very own perks, such as special events, discounts, and bonus content from each and every podcast guest that is available only to our Patreon supporters.
Will you become a Patreon supporter? It would mean the world to us.
I'm so impressed that you noticed and that you wanted to break. I don't know if it's generational for you, but for most of us, it's inherited. Deciding that you want it to stop with you is a very honorable stance. I have a lot of respect for that. And I can talk about that the rest of the time because it feels like that's a piece of what you're saying is that when you notice this in previous generations, mothers, grandmothers, and just make light of it or get frustrated with it rather than feel compassion and concern as you might for your kiddos or maybe for yourself, as you just said. That's kind of heartbreaking to me. I think one of the myths about aging or older people is that we're stuck in our ways and there's no point in trying. And that's not true at all. Human body and brain continues to change until game over. It's so exciting. It's so exciting. Talk about the promise. All of the research now that we have on neuroplasticity, that if you do some of these practices and if you develop awareness and you start to make little tiny shifts over time, you can get reconnected to your body and through that, perhaps your appetite and perhaps not feel so pressed. I mean, in my opinion, the loudest message, I think for everybody, but it just ramps up in menopause, is avoiding carbs and going high protein and just to what I consider to be ridiculous / harmful level. I'm sure you already know everything I'm going to say.
Absolutely. But I mean, everything I did was through the lens of health. I thought that I was being more healthy. So, okay, I'm going to cut out entire food groups.
Right.
And so my battle is with orthorexia, which is focusing on health pieces of it. I definitely know what you're saying. And that's all around us.
Yeah. I think the wellness message that what you're describing is very dangerous because people don't recognize it because it is so normalized that we completely miss out on. Food can also be, it's okay to have pleasure. It's okay to enjoy. It's okay to actually celebrate the bounty of the food that we have. It doesn't have to be so rooted in fear and control around what I consider to be our waistline is such a focus. Belly fat, such a focus.
You're so engrossed in the messages that are around us that it becomes difficult to discern what's normal and what to do. It's hard to know what to do if it isn't normal. If we recognize and we have that sense, this isn't how things should be, how to change our trajectory and the path that we're on. Will you please provide some support in navigating the intergenerational? So that means grandmother, mother, daughter that you were alluding to previously, that particular conversation about eating so we can become the change.
Yeah. I recommend having the same kind of conversation you might have with a teenager or with a friend. If you notice your mother or your grandmother consistently restricting or talking about their food rules or their worry about their body or their pressure to go do certain kinds of workouts, if that becomes dominant, I think it's concerning. And I think it's worth you offering your care. Just say, I'm just noticing this, and I just want you to know that I care about you. And maybe there's something to talk about here. Maybe you also probably want to set some boundaries around what you expose yourself and your children to when it comes to restriction and body shaming conversations. I think it's really important to set boundaries and maybe offer resources. There's so many awesome podcasts and books on this conversation. There's actually not a lot to offer with the exception of, in my opinion, Tracy Gendron's book, Ageism Unmasked, is a really nice, accessible book to start with. Ashton Applewhite has a TED Talk. If you have people in your life that you just want to show, if you're concerned about how we've internalized all this ageism, this TED Talk is, maybe 5 minutes and maybe That's a conversation starter. And Becca Levy's book, Breaking the Age Code, also really helpful resources if you want to start to open this conversation up for others. But I think what you've described in your own life, noticing that you're not comfortable with how this relationship with your body is and how that relationship is affecting your choices and how it's limiting your capacity for flexibility and joy and pleasure, when it becomes too containing and restrictive so that you don't feel like you can just like go out to dinner or say yes to an invitation. If you go on vacation, your workout schedule is what you're focused on. I mean, things like that, I think are red flags. So starting to go, okay, something's out of balance. I need to step back and look at my choices here. But looking at the fact that you can stop it so that your kids, I mean, you can also repair things that you've already experienced. Perhaps if you're a person who already has adult children, you can repair that. You can open up this conversation. I have many clients who really struggle with this, like feeling so guilty. I mean, isn't that what mothers do? So guilty about the damage.
Right.
Yeah, not remembering all the beautiful things that we've done. Yeah, to offer, like, this is what I'm doing in my own life, and I just want to apologize because I know I've messed up. Can we talk about that? There's opportunity for repair all along the way.
And that's freeing, to be
Yes.
honest, as a mom,
Yes.
to think about me being able to repair my relationship at every stage with my kids.
Yeah.
It relieves a little bit of pressure, but I still have a lot of pressure to do things the best that I possibly can. So
I know.
Quickly, I would like to circle back. We had a guest on the show. Her name is Dr. Rachel Good, and she is a professor and heads research in UNC. And she focuses on eating disorders, but through the lens of women of color and Indigenous people. And
Yes.
it was very eye-opening to talk to her because of how a lot of women of color are basically ignored if they do have behaviors of disordered eating, because one, they might not fit the look. Like we had said before, a thin white girl. Everybody thinks that someone with an eating disorder is going to have a certain look about them, and that's just not true. Off the top of your head, also as a nutritionist, what are some behaviors? You had talked about the restriction of food. Is there any other behaviors that we should be looking out for that might not be standard, might not be the things that we would just notice automatically with someone?
I'm so glad you brought this up because I live with thin privilege and many other able-bodied privileges, so many privileges. So I so appreciate you bringing up a very different kind of body. We have so little body diversity in the pro-aging conversation. People with eating disorders tend to be either normal weight or above what people would call normal weight. I mean, if you walk into a medical facility, all of that language is so problematic, it's hard to find the right words. But the image that I think comes up for us as an underweight person when we're talking about disordered eating, and it's actually not the case. That's actually the rare exception. It's usually somebody that would not appear to be a person who struggles with their eating. So, of course, what I see very commonly is kind of in a very like almost daily, if not several times a week cycle, there's like a restrict to binge, like pendulum swing in someone's life so that there's a preoccupation and there's just way too much thought about food and definitely way too much emotional reaction, guilt, shame in response to food and eating. I think that is one of the most important things, and it's hard. You can't see that, right? You may be able to hear it in conversation. You may be hear that people are going back again to their most recent diet or how they feel about their thighs, or, women really sadly bond over those conversations. So it can be, normalized again because it's such a common, like, it's almost like talking about the weather, it seems. It is hard unless you really have a relationship with somebody. It's hard to know that there's really a struggle there, that there really is something to be concerned with. And sadly, I think binge eating, it's a part of the restriction too. I mean, and certainly we don't recognize that many times exercise is used as a way to purge calories. That's also normalized, like, and almost affirmed. Like, if I'm going to have this cake, then I'm going to have to work out. That kind of like automatic relationship is actually disordered, but it's so normalized. Yeah. And it's preoccupying, and it creates this feeling of guilt and worry, right? Anxiety about your body and the amount of control that you have over your body. So it's subtle sometimes. It's hard to pick up.
There's certainly so many layers to it. I just finished reading, it's our book club book for August for her health collective. I'm Happy My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Essentially, her mom taught her this disordered eating behaviors and pushed her into a life of acting. And I listened to the audio book. So I heard it in her words, and I heard some of the parts where she got emotional, and it was a very fascinating listen, because I think it clearly demonstrates the depth that these intense emotions, just how all consuming those thoughts are.
What an amazing conversation today with Deb. Be sure to tune in next week for episode 78, where we dive into part 2 of our conversation, exploring Deb's recipe for aging with vitality and body liberation, the small, accessible practices you can implement in your life now, and how your body shame memories are deeply impacting your body story, and how you can take back control of that aspect of your life. Here are my top 3 takeaways from part 1 of our conversation with Deb. 1. There is promise and hope as we approach midlife, as long as we learn to not white knuckle it through. Aging offers us an opportunity to return to our most authentic self if we can learn to become more in touch and in tune with our bodies, our surroundings, and our own innate senses. It can be a time of reemergence as we return to our girlhood self and who we were before we became consumed with outside views and opinions. 2, we have 5 natural times in our day we can engage in our preferred embodiment practices, whether that is breathing, engaging in our senses, embodiment in the moment, grounding practices, etc. Those are at our 3 meal times, upon waking, and before bed. These are ready-made triggers in our day to alert us and remind us to engage in a deep breathing practice or to slow down and feel the earth under our feet. 3, diet culture is all around us. It tells us that to be thin is ideal, that carbs are evil, and that we are bad if we don't achieve a certain aesthetic with our body. There are intergenerational effects of diet culture, as its ripples can be seen, as dieting obsessions and behaviors are passed down from one generation to the next. We have a misperception of what disordered eating can look like. Not every individual with an eating disorder will be a thin white girl. Disordered eating can mean extreme limiting of calories, but it can also be binging behaviors, obsession with exercise, or demonization of entire food groups in the name of health. Our societal norms have taught us that many of these behaviors are good, and yet these very behaviors are the ones that are turning many individuals down a dangerous path and into a disordered relationship with food and their body. We hope you take away as much as we did from this episode. Be sure to tune in next week for part 2 of our conversation with Deb. High five, friend! We've enjoyed hanging out with you. Follow us so you're the first to know when we drop a new episode.
If you've enjoyed your time with us, let us know by leaving a review. We always love hearing from you. Until next time, stay true to you.